So, hello, and welcome in this episode of Awakening Stories. I'm really glad to have my friend Flora over, and she's gonna tell us all about the cool stuff that have happened in her life regarding spirituality, her awakening and activations, and I cannot wait to share that with you all. So a little bit more about Flora. She lives in Texas. And she is working in the medical field as well as in the spiritual and energetic field because she gives energy scans and readings, and she'll tell you all about it in the end. So now we're gonna start chatting, and I'm just gonna go ahead and ask you about your spiritual awakenings. How has it been for you? Which one do you want to share with us?
I think the biggest one was my Saturn return. So when I turned 30, it really shook my shit up. Like my whole life got really shaken up. And like I had gotten really sick with my gallbladder, but it's dumb because I'm an ultrasound technician. So I could look at my gallbladder any day of the week. And so I went a whole year of being sick to my stomach, and I didn't know. I was just like, oh, I have a stomach bug. Oh, I don't know why I'm throwing up at night, because I didn't have the typical gallbladder pains that I see at work. But and so I went a whole year of being sick, and then until I had turned 30. And then I didn't even make it a month after turning 30 of like I had to go to the hospital and get my surgically had it removed. And then I had a hard time going back to work in the medical field because I physically couldn't do my job. Like I was just a straight up workhorse. Like I worked by myself as an ultrasound tech in my own building. And so I was just like not just straight up workhorse. Nobody made me work that hard. I did it to myself. And when I physically couldn't do my job anymore, like my boss was like, what's going on? Like you need to get back to work, basically. And I'm like, I literally can't do it. Like everybody was used to me being a workhorse. And so I ended up having to quit that job because I physically couldn't do it anymore. So I did 3 months of it took me 3 months to heal from my, like, most people, they were like 2 weeks to a month and you're fine.
Okay.
But yeah, physically for me, it took me 3 months. Like I was still having stomach pains and it was wild. So that's when I started doing yoga, just to and I started getting into meditations and just like, because I physically couldn't do a whole lot. Like I couldn't do a sit up to get out of bed. It hurt. So I just like slowly got into yoga, like just natural, like the gentle yoga at the beginning and meditations. And then I finally got into real yoga that I could, do everything like poses and stuff. So yeah, that was wild.
Have you ever looked at the spiritual meaning of the gallbladder? Like, what is it linked to? What emotions is it linked to? And maybe that had something you needed to work on. Did you figure that out or not
Well,
yet?
I found it in my birth chart afterwards. So that would have been a lot easier if I knew what a Saturn return was when I was going through it. I didn't know at the time. And I think I found out the year after all this happened. So that's why I was like, that would have been easier. It's easier to know, like when you turn 30 or when your Saturn return is, what it is before it, just like a heads up of stuff's can get crazy, especially for me. My Saturn's in my first house. So they say like when your Saturn's in your first house, it can get a little hard. It's a harder Saturn return.
Okay. Can you explain what a Saturn return is for those that don't know?
Yeah. So Saturn is it takes 30 years for Saturn to make a complete rotation to the same spot where you were born. And so and that's just so wild to me that I didn't even make it a whole month. As soon as I turned 30, it was just like, it hit, like, it was wild. So yeah.
Okay. And besides yoga, what helped you go through that period? And how did any gifts awaken within you? I think things needed to change. What needed to change?
Yeah, I think I needed to, like, like I said, I did it to myself of not slowing down. I like physically had to slow down. Like, and it just hit me where I'm like, well, if I can't, and I've been doing ultrasound since I was 23. I think, no, 22. I don't know, in my 20s. And so that's like, I've been doing ultrasound and like being a straight up workhorse. Like that's just in my blood of and in my birth chart too. And so that's what I'm saying. Like I just threw my, and I'm a perfectionist, and I just threw my whole, everything was my job. And so that's what I think it made me slow down to think of like, oh my gosh, I can't do my job anymore.
Yeah.
Like, and so it just made me slow down a lot. And yeah, just totally. And then when I was meditating, I started doing like yoga nidra, and like, I'm telling like all the chill ones, and I didn't know how clairvoyant I was, because it all started for me with like dreams. And I was just like, oh, I thought everybody just has cool dreams like that until actually I dove into it more of like, oh my gosh, I've been having like dreams of like past lives, but I didn't know at the time what they were. I was just like, man, that dream feels so real. I'm like, oh, okay. And so yeah, so I didn't know how clairvoyant I was. And then whenever I was doing meditations, I would see colors, and I just start seeing things whenever I would be meditating. So I was just like, whoa. I was like, does everybody see colors when they meditate like that? So yeah, it just kind of like, and that's still my strongest one, is being clairvoyant. So that's the one I like the most. I guess I'm very visual too. So
Okay. And I remember that we did an initiation together for the energy scans. And I remember all of us had our clairvoyance shut off because we rely on it a lot, and we could not use it for like the first month of the initiation or something. We had to work with our other clairs to get things actually. And which leads me to, I think this was another spiritual awakening for you this time of your life.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when we did that. But another thing that also helped me a lot was I think when I was 31, Kim Russo, she had her first book come out called The Happy Medium.
Okay.
And she just gave like little tips of like stuff that happened to her. And she was explaining how whenever you go to sleep, it's like right before you fall asleep and right before you wake up is the easiest time for spirit to communicate with you. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Because like I said, with the whole, a lot of stuff was tied to my sleep. And so after I read that, that was like an awesome book to read right after and she also talked about the Saturn return. So that's why I had heard that too. And so that's why I was like, oh, this is so wild that, oh, I'm blanking.
It's okay.
Yeah. What was I saying?
You were talking about the book and the Saturn return.
Yes. So the Saturn return part of it. Oh my God, I'm just totally blanked on my story.
It's okay. I think it's because it's making room for something better to come.
Okay.
But
yeah, so yeah, that's what she said about she was the first one I heard, a Saturn return. So I felt like her book, and I don't even like to read, so I felt like her book really helped with my spiritual awakening part of it. I was just like, because I was a fan of hers from her TV show. It was called The Haunting of, and I was just like all the scary shows and stuff like that. But she was like a medium, and then she wrote her first book, so I was a big fan. So I was like, I'm going to read her book, and it really did help with my spiritual awakening part of it, because it explained stuff. So when she explained that right before you go to sleep and right before you wake up, those are dreams. They're not really dreams, they're visitations. And I had so I had my first visitation of one of my grandpas that I hadn't he passed away when I was like 6 months old, and I had seen his face floating above me, and I was like, whoa. I said, who? I didn't know who it was. All I saw was a smiley face. That wasn't, it was like creepy, but still like not scary, because it was a smiling face. And I was like, who was that? Because I didn't know who it was. And I just rolled over. I was all pissed off. I was like, ugh, who just scared me? Like, And then later on that week, I had saw a post on Facebook from my mom's brother, and it was my grandpa holding me and my other sisters and stuff, and he had the same smiling face, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was my grandpa who I didn't know. So that's why I was like, it made sense to where I was like, and then that's when I clicked of like, okay, so those dreams that I would have right before I wake up, those were really visitations and stuff. So those are very vivid, and if I can remember them, there's a meaning. And
Okay.
yeah.
And did you saw him floating above your bed, like in the room or in your mind's
Yes.
eye? Okay.
Yeah,
So
it was in the room. Like my eyes were, I think my eyes were open. I'm not sure now that I think about it. But his face, it was just a floating face. It
okay.
wasn't anything else, just a floating face. And it was just smiling. And then, yeah. And so I've seen that a couple of times of other stuff. But yeah, that was the first time. And it was just so crazy because it was right after I read that page in the book of like, oh, that's interesting. And then I guess he was like, oh, this is the way I can show her.
And what next did awaken within you? Did another Claire come up, or did you just work with that clairvoyance?
Yeah, honestly, I really didn't try and work with anything because when I was just working in the medical field, I'm telling you, I totally learned how to block myself from
Mm.
everything because it was a lot of just walking into hospitals and walking into doctors' offices with like, I did OB-GYN, so it's like lots of pregnant women and emotions and life and death that can happen. And so, yeah, I would just got used to blocking myself off. So, yeah, during that time, I really wasn't trying to open up anything or like dig into it. I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, this is just what happens to me, whatever. But when we started, we took our class that just kind of took off of like, I don't know what even got into me. I was listening to podcasts and I was listening to Natasia's podcast. And so, yeah, I just got into like real spiritual, like podcasting and like, I like to listen to that kind of stuff. And so I listened to her, Natasia's podcast, and she was talking about her energy scan, ESI. And so I was just like listening to it on the podcast and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do that. And then I was like, wait, what the heck? Why am I going to do that? I don't know. And so, yeah. And then that's when I met you guys.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that's when a lot of stuff started happening. So that was definitely another awakening, and then trying to learn how to use my gifts, and that all started happening.
Yeah. And I know your family is spiritual and religious, but I also know that your grandma was a big part of your spirituality. Do you want to tell a little bit more about that and how that helped you during that time of your life?
Yeah, well, it's like my whole life, hearing about my grandma, who was a curandera. She's a healer, a spiritual healer. And so, yeah, like she was literally my next door neighbor. So we grew up next to her, like, and she was just like the coolest grandma who's so spiritual. And we just grew, I just like growing up, I love hearing people's ghost stories. I love hearing scary stories. And I think that's my Scorpio rising. So I just love hearing all the ooky spooky stuff. And so, like, literally hearing all the scary stories that have happened to everybody and in my family, and just listening to my dad tell me how he grew up with his mom who would perform exorcisms. And he would just tell me stuff that's actually happened to him. And so, yeah, that was just wild. And like one story, like my dad's coworker, his wife was actually possessed. And he's like, well, he invited him and his wife, to our house. And he says, we can walk her over to my mom's house. And so he comes over to our house with his coworker and his wife. And then my dad's like, okay, well, we're going to go walk to my mom's house. And then we're just literally, he said they literally walked out of the house and that lady stopped. And she's like, I'm not going over there. And they're like, why? She's like, I'm not going to that house. Because the spirit knew already that my grandma was going to get it out of her. And so I was just like, oh, that is so wild. Like, I loved hearing that kind of stuff. And so, yeah. So just growing up in a family of hearing all the spiritual, scary stories. And knowing that my grandma was so powerful and I was always protected, anytime anything scary happened to me, then I would just, tell my mom, tell my grandma, and I'd feel so safe of like my grandma would come over and clean the house spiritually. And so I was just like, oh, I'm fine, I'm protected. And then when she passed away, I feel even more protected because I'm like, she was so powerful on earth. I can't imagine how powerful she is spiritually. So yeah.
That's amazing. And I don't know, maybe that's a hard question, but what does spirituality mean to you? How would you define that? And maybe what's your practice of it?
Well, yeah, I did grow up. So like just from watching my grandma, I grew up, well, we all like we're Mexican, Mexican American, Texan. And we just grew up Catholic. So that's just how we grew, that's the religion we grew up with. And so I was always like very spiritual, I feel like, but I could always figure out like, I don't really believe in that kind of thing, where I would decide like, I'm not going to look too much into that of like yoga's bad, like yoga's evil or something. And I'm like, I don't believe that. So I'm just going to, I didn't care. I did my own thing. But yeah, I honestly did love like the prayers because I have a really good memory. And just growing up, I learned in our, what's called CCD classes, is catechism classes, where you would they make you remember prayers and stuff like that. And we learn about like saints and stuff. So I always thought that was really cool. And I like that kind of stuff. But, and the Virgin Mother Mary and learning about Jesus and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm very tied to, I like that. But then I was always so open-minded because I knew the kind of how deep it got. Like it wasn't just we're just seeing my grandma in how spiritual, and that she told me that she's like, I do everything through Jesus and through God and through prayer. She's like, that's how I can heal people. And I was like, that's so awesome. And that even people would think that my grandma was a witch or bad, but really all she was doing was healing people through prayers. And so I was just like, so I was always very open-minded to, it's bigger than just a religion or just all the rules that come with being a Catholic.
Do you also work with prayer yourself, like your grandma did?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I do. I like to pray to Saint Michael, the Archangel, and I like to learn about the angels. And yeah. So yeah, I do. And I'm very like, whenever I usually get a reading, it's like people are always like, Jesus is with you. And I was like, oh yeah, Jesus is my homeboy. So
So I have a question that I find interesting. It's maybe a little bit out of the conversation, but what do you find the most cringe about spirituality and New Age at the moment?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't really have a lot of friends that are like spiritual or in like, I don't know, because I was thinking about this
Yeah.
because even growing up, I liked music. I like different music from my friends. Like nobody ever liked the same stuff I was into. I was like, I liked my rock music. I was just like, I liked other stuff that nobody ever liked my stuff. So I never really had a lot of friends. And that's what I was like, going through my Saturn return, that would have been easier to have somebody to like kind of guide me through it, or like, actually, this is what's happening. And I was like, nope, got to figure that shit out by myself. So yeah, I don't know if I'm keeping up with like other people in like the new age movement or anything like that. I kind of just do my own thing, I guess.
Which is amazing because a lot of people are just following. Um, I don't like to use the word guru because it's it's not what people will say it is, basically, but leaders of weird movements, basically cult leaders sometimes. It's yeah, and I'm blanking too because I don't remember what my point was, but that's okay. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to say that basically it's important to have discernment and not being influenced by others too much. And I feel like you're very grounded and have that discernment about what you believe in and what others believe in.
Yeah.
While being compassionate and open-minded too, but you have a mind of your
Oh
own.
yeah, absolutely. That's what I think too. I'm like, I'll listen to it. I'm like, well, what do you think about it? Yeah, okay. And then if it makes sense to me, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Or if not, I'm like, okay, well, that's your opinion. That's cool.
So you told us about a book that helped you during your Saturn return. What did help you afterwards? Is there a book, a movie, a show, a documentary that helped you through things?
No, I think just the whole like going through it all with my Saturn return. And then I actually just read that book, The Happy Medium, and it was just so cool how it came out. And then, oh yeah, she did have another book. She had a second book called My Life's Purpose, or I think it's called that. But I also read that one too. And so that's what I was like, I'm not a big reader. Just don't like to read. I need to. I have like 3 books that and spirits even came through and told me, you need to read those books. And I'm like, I hate to read, but I need to, I know I need to read them. But yeah, so I read Kim Russo's 2 books and I really liked those. And I feel like those really helped out, like trying to just on my spiritual path.
Okay. Oh yeah, I know what I wanted to ask you about because I can spot the cards, the oracle decks behind you, and how did it come into your life?
I think it was 2020 where I was so I was working at a hospital, and then all this stupid COVID stuff started happening, and so they cut all my hours. And I was just like, okay, that's fine. I was only working 1 day a week, so I had plenty of time to deep dive into a bunch of stuff that I wanted to. Like I said, I never read. And so whenever I was like, well, I have plenty of time to read and look into different stuff that I've always wanted to kind of research and dive into. And just one day I was just like, I think I want to do tarot cards. Like I'm just gonna get my first deck, or like, I kept I watching like, my favorite readers on YouTube and stuff. And I was just like, I think I'm gonna get oracle cards. Like I was like, those are really pretty. I just wanted everything that was pretty. So I got my first deck, first 3 decks actually. I just ordered them online and then just started doing them. And like I said, I got a really good memory. So I would watch YouTube readers, and I was just like, oh, okay, so that's what that card means. That's what that card means. And so it was just like stuff like that that I'm interested in gets burned into my brain. And so it was like really easy. And then when my grandma had passed away, we helped, it took a couple of years to get my aunt we were going to help her clean out some of the closets because my grandma was a little bit of a hoarder. And so her like 2 closets took us like, 2 or 3 days just to clean out 2 closets. And so we were in one of her closets and I found some old decks. She actually had tarot and decks. And so I was like, oh, I want to keep these, and I found some incense and stuff. And so I was like, and then my aunt was telling me, she's like, oh yeah, grandma was really good at the cards. Like she was like, of course, she was really psychic and she was so good. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And so that's another way of like, I knew my grandma did it. I knew it wasn't bad. Like everybody thinks, divination's bad, And so I was like, well, my grandma would do it. So I was like, I'm going to do it. And so I just kind of dove into it and I really like doing it. So it's pretty. I mean, I like the pretty cards, like I said.
Well, I do too. And it's just a way of, yeah, to me, tarot decks and oracle decks are often also more than just divinatory stuff. It helps with self-development and,
Yeah.
mindset stuff, a way of working through things, basically. Not just you're gonna find the love of your life the next Friday.
Well, I actually like to do them so I really tie them into my energy scans. So I'll do like about 30 minutes of energy work, and then and it's so cool because like I said, very clairvoyant, like I'll see symbols and I'll tell the person I'm doing the energy scan, this is what I'm seeing. And so they're just sitting there like, oh, okay. And then after I'm done with the energy scan, I was like, okay, now we're gonna do some cards. And literally, it's so cool when it happens. Is like the cards that fly out are the ones that have pictures that I was just talking about that I had just saw. And so I was like, see, and so that really blows their minds of like, oh, you did see that, and you were just saying that. And I was like, so that's why I was like, it's so if you're a visual person, they're just such a good tool to help visualize what I'm saying.
Yeah. And you've talked a lot about clairvoyance, but what are your other gifts, your other clairs? The strongest ones or the ones that you don't like too much?
So let's see. So I didn't know I was such an empath, and like growing up, because like I would always block myself off from because I could feel other people's feelings, and I didn't realize I was like, oh my gosh, I was blocking myself off from so much because I just naturally did it of blocking myself. And so yeah. So being an empath definitely, and now like ever since we started learning from our energy scan class, I definitely had to learn how to feel my feelings, because that's like I think that's the second strongest for me. Is it clairsentience?
Yeah.
Is feeling? Yeah. So yeah. So clairvoyant, clairsentience, and I feel like the weakest one is still my clairaudience. I just get the ringings in my ears a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm just working on that. But yeah. But my mom, that's her strong. It's so weird to me that my mom, that's her strongest is clairaudience. And I'm like, she like straight up hears voices telling her stuff. And I'm like, I don't get that at all. So it's
You
wild.
know, a friend of mine told me that whenever she has these ringings in her ears, it's because there's something, a message that wants to come through, and she just asks her team for the frequency to adapt to her human ears, to her human ears.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done that too, because I often also have ringing in my ears, and it works. It usually takes a little bit of time, but I'm gonna see something in my dream or get a download later. So maybe you can try that.
Yeah, I just usually when I get those ringings in my ear, and I'm just like, if that's a download from my highest good, go ahead and let it come in, because I don't know what it is. Like it's
Yeah.
just so, and it sometimes it'll be like super loud or long. And one day I had like a half a day of just like it just had the weirdest muffled in one ear.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I went to sleep and I woke up and it was fine. But I was just like, that was so weird. So yeah, I get weird stuff with my ears, but you know, no voices yet.
And what I just want to say for people that might have that experience of ringing in the ears, if it's not something medical, of course, is that it's not going to come through your ear. It's going to come through your other senses also. It doesn't have to come through the same sense that's making you feel the things. So I wanted to ask you about feeling your feelings, because as you protected yourself a lot because of your work, how was it when you opened yourself a little bit and lower down the barriers, the walls that you put?
Yeah, that was wild. It's like so hard to, I mean, I didn't realize how much I was blocking everything, but just having to feel everything, and then it came all at once. Like, so yeah, that was rough, but getting better at it. I mean, I just probably even had blocks of just growing up in our family of like being Mexican, and we don't really, it's like a joke of like, we don't really say I love you or give hugs or, you know, that kind of stuff. So it was like having to learn everything all at once.
Crash course on feeling your feelings.
Yes. Feeling feelings, admitting I have feelings, and
Yeah.
showing my emotions. Yeah. It was a lot.
And did something help you during that time, or just going through the movement?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you guys really helped me a lot from my energy scan sisters. That because I'm like that really helped to have a friend who actually likes the same kind of stuff I do for once. They're like, when y'all, I don't know, y'all just, you're gonna make me cry. Just talking, having somebody to talk to during my hard time. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so important to find soul sisters, really, because I was talking about that because during our initiation for energy scans, we were 5 and 4 of us are really close. And I was talking to Maria and I was like, I love you so much. I can feel our relationship being so pure and open and really unconditional, non-judgmental. And it's so amazing to find people that are here for you, holding space without any hidden agenda or anything, and people that get you, really. It's really an amazing experience and something everyone should have, especially during awakenings, because these are hard times sometimes.
Yeah.
Not for
Like I said,
everyone,
it
but
was rough. Yeah.
and did that trickle down to your family and your close people, your close one, that feeling your feelings? And
I don't know. It's been hard to say because it kind of happened. So let me get myself together.
of course, and I'm gonna talk a little bit because my family too is not really talking a lot or sharing their feelings, and we're like not big talkers. And being the one that tries to voice and verbalize things that I feel, and sometimes it's not easy. So yeah, and it doesn't really affect them. They're not, you know, sharing more of things, but that's okay. All things your
Yeah.
time, maybe.
So it was wild. So exactly when we started the first week of our classes for energy scan, my dad gotten sick, and he was sick that whole first month, and then he passed away during our energy scan classes. So that's, I was like, my whole life kind of crashed, and you guys were really, that was the only thing that stayed steady was my energy scan classes. So I felt like everything was for a reason of why I met you girls, and y'all really helped me through the hardest part of my life where everything else fell apart. I kept doing the classes, and it really helped like everything in my life, because like I said, with my family, we weren't talking about our feelings, and we were all sad, but we didn't grow up that way to like talk about our feelings. So it's like, everybody keep it to yourself, basically. And y'all and you guys were the only ones that was actually talking to how hard of a time I was going through, and y'all really helped me a lot the whole time. Yep.
And yeah, I'm glad we were there for you and be able to hold space. And also, we were, I think, amazed because you did not stop. You kept coming back and did the work. You could have, I mean, we were maybe expecting that somehow, that when something happens, you just stop or retreat back on yourself. But that's what got you going, basically. And now it's opening a whole new thing for you because it's something that you do for a living too.
Yes. So that's why I was like, it really, like, a lot of stuff just happened with my job. So I couldn't do my I wasn't wanting to do ultrasound anymore, being in the medical field. And so I just started, I'm taking this whole year to try to build up my business, doing my energy scans and oracle card readings and more spiritual work.
And that's going okay, I guess.
Yes, I like it. It's fun for me. And so that's what's so wild of like thinking of going back into the medical field, and just like, I'm like, well, I'll do it for money, you know what I mean? Like I
Mm.
know that sounds bad, but of course we all need money. But whenever I get off from work, I'll like check my Instagram and I'm like, ooh, a couple people want some readings. I was like, and so that really lights me up of like, this is fun. I like doing this spiritual work compared to like, well, I gotta go do some ultrasounds.
Yeah. And what's your favorite practice, spiritual practice?
um like you mean like as in the energies, like what, like my
Well,
offerings of
or no, like what do you do for yourself? Like, is it maybe pulling cards or meditation or channeling some
hmm,
stuff?
okay, yeah. I do like to pull cards for myself and just see what happens, and it just makes me giggle whenever I see certain things, and I'm like, oh, okay, like just a little clarification, and I was like, yeah, and it'll be like a big yes card. I'm like, oh, okay, sure, and it's just funny.
And I like when you share your card pull because you will use one deck and it will be like, I don't know, purification, and you will take another deck and it will be the same word in another card in a completely different deck. And it always
Yes.
blows my mind when there's like power, 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 or from three different decks. How are the chances?
I
What
know
are the
that
chances?
blows my mind too. So I just like I'll throw the cards around and I'm like, oh my gosh, after I figure out like these words all are all the same. And so I'm like, I have to share this. And like it's somebody else is gonna get a message from this too. So I love posting that on my Instagram stories and stuff.
Yeah. And from your offerings, what do you like to do the most? And if you want to share about your offerings a little bit more, you can.
Yeah, so I really love doing the energy scans. Like, and like I said, so it's like the clairvoyant part of it, of just like anything that you need to know for your highest good, any clearings, healings, guidance that comes up when we look at the 7 major energy centers and just kind of figure out what you need personal. So like they're so one of a kind for each and tailored to each person. So it'll be, I do like a solid 30 minutes of just energy work and looking just straight clairvoyantly. And then I try to do, I always do the cards right afterwards. And like I said, it's just so, it's, it's so amazing how the cards come out of just what I literally just said that. And so that, I just think that's so neat. So yeah, those are, and then I've just been offering like tarot, oracle card readings. I do that online too. So, yep, those are the 2 things I've been doing.
Yeah. And it's amazing because I've had both and I always loved it. So cannot recommend enough. And where can people find you?
So, I'm on Instagram at HDZ Flora. And so, yeah, I like my Instagram the most. I don't really use my Facebook, but yeah, hit me
It
up
will
on
be linked in the
Instagram
show
and
notes. Yeah, I
okay,
will link
cool.
it in the show notes so that people can find you.
Good. So yeah, just hit me up on Instagram, DM me for like a reading, or if you have any questions about the energy scans.
Amazing. And as a little farewell, oh, that's a good question. Thank you. Uh, what would be an advice that you would give to your younger self during an awakening or a hard period of your life?
Um, maybe feel your feelings before it all crashed down on you and you have to do it. Don't be so blocked off.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to someone that's probably going through something similar than you, like have to feel their feelings?
Let's see. Just have some, well, like at least find one good friend that you can actually talk to, feel safe with, and yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And is there anything else you want to share, maybe?
I
No?
don't think
Okay.
so. I think we're good.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this chat with me, and I hope that it served you and other, because, well, I know it did because it was my intention, and intention is everything. As much as I don't like this saying, it's true. That concludes our episode with Flora. I hope that you got everything that you needed from it, and I'm sure you did. Next week, we have an episode with Melissa sharing all about her awakening, what triggered it. We will also talk about discernment, Reiki, and other good stuff. In the meantime, I hope you keep feeling your feelings, and I will see you soon. Bye.